People divorced in under a year. What went wrong? Story 1. I was in the military and we had been together for 6 years and were both 22 years old. She came to my duty station and we got married on a Saturday, the weekend of my birthday. She flew back to my home state that Sunday and was killed by a drunk driver. Oh my God, I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been terrible for you. Story 2. Together on and off for 11 years. Married on our 11-year anniversary. That was August 23. December 22nd, she passed in an accident. Oddest part may be that my father lost his wife on the same day when he was the same age. Story 3. I went to school with a girl who got married in July 2016 after 3 months of dating a guy. They got divorced in November 2016 after the presidential election. Turns out one of them was an extreme conservative and the other was an extreme liberal, and this was not discovered until then. I guess politics was more important for them than love. Story 4. When I got home from Afghanistan, my wife at the time admitted that she had sex with 23 guys while I was gone. Needless to say, our marriage ended real quick. I don't think she understood the directions of 23 and me. Story 5. What went wrong? Does being stupid count? We had been dating for about 3 years. Got to a crossroads. Both of us finished school. I was thinking about what job offer I wanted to accept and where I'd have to move. He was having a major freak out about not being together, so he convinced me to get married. It wasn't that hard. I was apprehensive about moving to a strange town, and marriage seemed like a better idea. After marriage, I went to work. He decided he wanted another degree. Okay, then about 6 months into his new studies, he gets recruited for a job 1,000 miles away. He took the job without telling me, but we pack up and move. Now he's working and I'm working. But he's working at a job he's really excited about, and I'm working at a crappy, low-paying job because it's the only thing I can find. Then he gets headhunted by another company. We move again, only now we are living in a rented trailer because it's the only thing we can find on short notice. He's working 12-hour days, and I'm stuck at home. No job, no car, no friends. Truthfully, I wasn't the best of marriage partners. I'm going freaking crazy, stuck at home all day with no car and no company except the TV. When he does come home after working a 12-hour day, he's exhausted. I'm giving him crap about not getting out of the house. Ever. He starts hanging out with his work friends, probably to avoid me. He starts cheating with the women at work. No idea how many other women there were, but I know of at least 2. I know about these women because by now I've started to develop a circle of friends, mostly wives of the people he works with. They tell me. When I confronted him, he told me that he just didn't realize how hard marriage would be. I took the car and drove home, left him in that crappy trailer with no car. Some months later, he asks me to file for divorce. I told him no way. He fricked up. He could file and explained the grounds to his attorney and the judge. He sent me the divorce papers in the mail. He did call me about 10 years later and apologized for being such a butthole. But really, it wasn't all him. It sounds like your ex was just living his life for himself, regardless of you and your needs. I hope you find someone better than this cheater. Story 6. My dad's second marriage lasted 5 months. I remember moving into my old stepmom's place when I was a kid, and then, less than a school year later, moving right back out. I had a stepsister who was physically handicapped from birth. She could walk very slowly and laboriously with a walker, but primarily used a wheelchair. My stepmom was so protective of her. My stepsister was 16, and my stepmom would cut her food for her like she's not mentally handicapped whatsoever. And my stepmom was treating her like a kindergartner, which obviously made stepsister hate stepmom. Dad tried to get stepmom to let up. The stress of the poor relationship between mother and daughter led to stepmom and my dad fighting constantly. Dad tried to get therapy for everyone, and no one would bite. Dad divorced her, and she hated his guts for not being strong enough for her daughter, with whom my dad had the best relationship. It's 10 years later, and I ran into stepsister at the store recently. She's doing really well, graduated with her master's in linguistics, and teaching some undergrad courses at the local college. Stepmom is single and still trying to manage every aspect of her life. but stepsister isn't letting her anymore. None of my business, I guess. Good on your stepsister. Story 7. Mine lasted just a little over a year, but close enough. Married my girlfriend of 4 years right before getting deployed. She didn't have anything to keep herself busy while I was gone, job, hobby, etc. Ended up getting into drugs while I was gone. Then I got her pregnant during my 2-week leave in the middle of the deployment. She felt so trapped that she had talked me into agreeing to give our child up for adoption once she was born. I was so blindly in love with her that I would have agreed to darn near anything she suggested. She ended up leaving me a week after our daughter was born and canceling the adoption, taking her back from the adopting parents. Long story cut short, she got back into drugs. Pretty sure she wasn't on them while pregnant with my daughter. Had 2 more kids with whoever was her dealer at the time, and CPS ended up stepping in, which gave me full custody of my daughter. Not a day goes by when I look at my daughter and wonder what the frick I was thinking. And I'm so glad to have this wonderful, crazy little girl in my life. I feel for you and your daughter, and I'm glad you two have each other. Story 8. Another abuse story. The final straw was when he held me down after 6 weeks of marriage and anally raped me, telling me over and over, "You can't rape your wife." Took me another month to figure out how to leave and put my plan in motion. Moved 400 miles away, started over, then believed him when he said he went to detox and recovery and gave him one more chance. Less than 2 weeks later, I had a gun put to my head, an ashtray thrown across the room at my face, and security had to remove him from my job twice. Had to get the police involved to get him out of my rent house. Then disappeared again. Safe now, been 21 years since then, and am now married to the love of my life. Frick that guy with a pineapple. He was dangerous and totally messed up. I'm surprised you gave him a second chance after what he did to you the first time. These kind of monsters don't change. Story 9. We were together for 7 years, living together for 5 before he proposed. Total surprise to me. We hadn't discussed it. Got married a year later. 7 months after that, he started withdrawing and acting depressed. So I tried to get him to talk about what he was feeling. He said he couldn't stand to be around me and hated me. Then moved out 2 weeks later, divorced 6 weeks after that. I still wonder what happened. We haven't spoken since he called to confirm he didn't want to do counseling and just wanted a divorce instead. Story 10. The second day after the wedding, a sheriff showed up on our doorstep with child support papers for a 3-month-old baby. Turns out he had been sleeping with his co-worker. I was willing to look past the indiscretion, but when he refused to take responsibility for his child, I couldn't handle it anymore. The kid shouldn't have to suffer because his dad is an idiot. Divorce was final 11 months after our wedding day. Well done, you did the right thing. He made a mistake. The result was a baby which he should take responsibility for. No excuses. Story 11. Sort of related. I just wanted to tell this story. So, I work as staff for weddings, set up, breakdown, serving, cleaning, cooking if need be, etc. I'm in for another day at work and we're doing a pretty big wedding, all separately plated, restaurant style rather than buffet, which is a lot more work. I was already checked out for this wedding and I was absent-mindedly setting dishes up when my boss comes in, has us all huddled together and tells us that the bride has late-stage cancer and would die by the end of the year, and that we should make this the best service we could ever give. When she showed up, she was smiling, laughing, and joking with everyone, and she was without a doubt the most fun person we had worked for. They were all heartwarming people and glad to experience the big day. We worked our asses off. There were no mistakes that day. We had blisters on our feet, our arms, legs, could barely move once it was all said and done. But we had never been so proud to staff a wedding in our lives. At the end of it, the bride and groom came through and hugged everyone who worked that day. It was bittersweet working that day, but we made that wedding the best wedding they could experience. It's been over a year, and I hope that the families are all doing well now. Dang you! I have a reputation at work as a salty, jaded old sailor to maintain. You're not helping at all by making me tear up. Story 12. My ex-wife and I lasted about 7 years, but her first marriage ended pretty much right at the year mark. They were both 19, she got pregnant, they got married and tried to make their life work on one $8 an hour income. with her as a stay-at-home mom with no money, no car, and no friends in the same place in life she was. Day in and day out stress drove them apart. So true. The stresses of life often drive people apart. Story 13. A friend of mine bought a house in a small town with his new wife, and he continued to commute 1 hour each day to work in our city. She worked part-time in the small town. Around the 10-month mark of their marriage, she cheated on him with a mechanic in that small town. That was 5 years ago, and she's still with the mechanic, but he won't commit. Story 14. Not my responsibility, my older sister's. The marriage wasn't the best from the beginning. While in transit with friends to spend Christmas at my parents', my sister's ex hit a patch of black ice and rolled their car at 55 miles per hour. His best friend wasn't buckled in and was thrown through the sunroof and killed. Her ex-husband spiraled into depression, and it ended the marriage 8 months in. Lots of things happened that led to the split, but this was the one tragic incident to really push divorce into motion. Oh, what a terrible, tragic story. I can't imagine the guilt of being the driver and getting into an accident that kills your best friend. I hope he's doing better. So sad to hear it also led to the divorce. Story 15. My ex was previously engaged to a man with a terminal illness. They were together for many years, but he broke it off for her own good. She was also sexually abused by her father, and there was a lot of baggage that came with that too. We were very good friends in high school and reconnected over 10 years later. She was completely open with me about everything, so I knew what I was getting into. With a broken heart and broken family, she found comfort in an old friend. And what I feel happened was she mistook safety and normalcy for love. She was way out of my league by many standards, so I tried to give her everything she needed to make her happy. But she was dealing with a lot of mixed emotions. Because of her abuse, she rarely enjoyed sex and thought she was letting me down as a wife, even though I told her I knew this going in and never expected anything and never pressured her one bit. When she needed space, I gave her space. But when she needed somebody to talk to, at first it was me. But I didn't have the history that her and her ex-fiancé had. She would call him in the middle of the night at his third shift job. At first, I tried to be understanding of it, but it hurt. I knew she still loved him. We struggled, tried separating. It was a roller coaster. Things were back on the way up while lying in bed one day. She asked me, "Is it worth it?" Meaning all of the ups and downs over the past year. I said, "Of course it is. I love you. As long as we love each other enough, it's worth it." She looked back at me with a look of guilt, and that's when I realized she didn't. Not another word was said. I got up and slept on the couch, left for the final time the next morning. That was 8 years ago. I've been in a few relationships since, but never remarried. I don't expect many of you have read this far, but that's okay. It was kind of therapeutic to write it out. So thanks, stranger on the internet. You asked a question that nobody close to me has in years, because back then I just brushed it off because I didn't want to talk about it. At least we didn't have kids or any jointly owned assets. So our divorce was just a breakup with a little paperwork. Story 16. This one's kind of fricked up. Happened to a friend. We were deployed to Okinawa. My friend married his girl prior to deployment. He found out mid-deployment that she cheated on him. But the way he found out was kind of messed up. He checked his Facebook one day and saw a message from some dude he didn't know. The guy straight up told him that he slept with his wife. She didn't say she was married. And when he checked her Facebook, he saw she was married to my friend. He felt guilty and had to message him. My friend wasted no time and divorced her in Oki. I'm not sure if that was possible. I just remember him doing some kind of legal work the following day. Good on the guy for telling him, though. Some would just want to avoid the situation and let further harm be done. Story 17. She started feeling trapped, as in my expectation of monogamy was too much. So she discovered polyamory, decided she wanted to be polyamorous with her boss, and that it was worth opening the marriage no matter what. She was pretty surprised when I divorced her. You did the right thing in getting rid of Holly, whatever she is. Story 18. After spending a year together, we got married so he wouldn't get deported. I took care of him, paid all the bills, paid to sponsor him. Turns out he was already married in his own country. Yup. Took me a while to stop being bitter over the thousands of dollars I got conned out of. My dad had recently died, and I suppose he saw me like a lion sees a wounded gazelle. I briefly dated a guy who said he was separated from his wife. Well, technically, he wasn't lying. I mean, she was in another country while he was here. I found out they weren't separated when he asked me to be quiet while he was on a phone call with her and his kids back home. Sucker. Story 19. I posted this story once before, but there are some epic add-ons since I told the story the first time. So I had been working a ton and she'd been home working off and on, mostly off, and all the signs were there. She'd shut the laptop when I was in the room, put a lock code on her phone that wasn't there before, etc. And one day I came home early and caught them both taking a cat nap. Now, I'm not the jealous type, but the sheer level of disrespect was too much. So I filed for divorce less than a week later and packed my crap, kept the dog, and moved across the country for a fresh start. She begged me to come back for months and months. Now, here's the twist. She had been asking me to come back pretty regularly, but one day I got a text from one of my buddies asking if I knew she was pregnant. Apparently, she's gotten knocked up by some random and wanted me to come back so she could try to say I was the father. Unreal. I immediately called her out on it. Haven't heard from her since. A horrible excuse for a woman. Well done for leaving her and not going back. Story 20. I was in grad school. Her conservative parents hadn't let us live together until we were married. We got married as soon as she graduated undergrad and got her first ever job. Her parents were also rich and she didn't have to work. She became a teacher and we moved to where she was teaching. Since I only had a year of school left, I had a 4-hour-a-day commute to school and was working full-time on campus. So I think I slept from midnight to 4 a.m. 5 days a week. Come the weekend, I would crash and recover. Meanwhile, she wanted to go out and enjoy life, freedom, her own money, all that. She started going out with her girlfriends. Then a guy joined the group. I suppose I can yada yada the rest. The hardest part was that I was in my last year of grad school and couldn't devote any attention to it. In the end, though, I found out she was lying to me about trying to work on our relationship, so there wasn't anything to fight for. I think we're both better off now. I know she married the guy and they had a kid, or maybe some kids. I remarried. I'm financially better off. I have a great son. I hope she has the same. Story 21. We were kids when we got together. Grew up together but in different directions. We got married to fix the relationship. The day after our wedding, my dad was hospitalized with alcohol-related things and almost died. My new husband told me he would not go with me to the hospital and hoped my dad died since he felt he deserved to die. Yeah, Dad lived. Still going strong and kicked the drinking completely for almost a decade now. Ex-husband jumped in front of a train in a year after the divorce. So that's interesting how that ended up. That went from 0 to 100 real quick. Holy crap. Happy to hear about your dad. I hope you're handling everything okay. Story 22. Man, this story sucks. College roommate. He met a girl in junior year that our entire group, though, knew was wrong for him. But love is blind. Fast forward to summer after graduation, and they are to get married in the fall. I am in the wedding. They were apart for most of the summer as he was working and she was finishing school and putting the wedding together. We converge on her hometown in Colorado. Wedding goes down, big reception, lots of money dropped on this one. We see them off to the honeymoon and I return to St. Louis to home sweet home. 7 days later, I got a call from him asking if he can stay with me. Sure, I pick him up at the airport, single. At his insistence, we hit the nearest bar and I get to hear all about how she cheated on him over the summer but went ahead with the marriage because she felt pressured by how much her parents were paying. She told him pretty much as soon as they were alone, after the ceremony, not at any time during the 7 to 10 days they were together, before the wedding. She insists they go on the honeymoon to work things out, but refuses to be intimate as she still has feelings for the other guy. So he never returns to her, gets checked for all the STDs, negative, and has the marriage annulled within 6 months. Belinda, frick you for what you did to my friend, but refuses to be intimate as she still has feelings for the other guy? What the frick? Some people are just natural users and abusers. Belinda is one of them. Story 23. I was married for slightly more than a year. We were high school sweethearts and literally got married right after high school. Our whole marriage was plagued with terrible life events. We moved closer to her college, but had to move back due to finances. And right about this time, my grandmother had died. We were pretty poor after moving back home, but we managed for a while. Things were even looking nice. We had moved out of my mom's house and had our own apartment again. We were working, had money, and we're enjoying our time together. I got deathly ill, and this put me out of work. With medical bills and rent, we were back to struggling. I had a lot of mental issues like anxiety and depression at the time as well, and so did she. She started to get really close to a coworker while I was out of work too. They're dating now. I moved out in November 2015. We were married in July 2014. We were officially divorced in April last year. We haven't talked much since, and it's still difficult sometimes to think about, but I've gotten much better over the past few months. Hang in there, dude. I have no idea how it must feel, but it will get better. Story 24. My mom's first marriage ended after 7 months because it turned out her ex-husband had schizophrenia and refused to take his medications. Schizophrenia is extremely hard to live with and impossible if the person doesn't take the meds. Story 25. Long story short, cancer. Dated for a few years and decided to move in together with her roommates. The same year we did that, she gets diagnosed with ovarian cancer, which is why I am very angry at the sexist attitudes doctors have when it comes to women. If they allowed her to get her tubes tied like she wanted years ago, they might have found it at an earlier stage. But there's no good symptoms or signs of early stage ovarian cancer. We were going to get married this summer, but her oncologist said to move it up. So we got married this past September. She died in December. Story 26. My mom's marriage to her first husband was only a year and a half at most. He was diagnosed with cancer and he said that he wanted to marry her before he died. So they got married, took a honeymoon to Hawaii because he'd always wanted to go there too. Edit. He passed away. That was what ended the marriage. Some have asked for clarification. Oh, this is the saddest story here. Story 27. Throwaway because personal reasons. My mother married a man after my father that lasted exactly 1 year. He used the claw end of a hammer on her after they were done having sex on their wedding night. She stayed with him for 2 months trying to figure out how to leave without getting her or my sister and I hurt. He was never mean or physically abusive to me, but he said nasty things about my sister's bad attitude, calling her a bitch in front of 10-year-old innocent me, yelling at her for a bouncy ball, stupid crap that was bigger crap than I realized, and my mother was terrified. He slapped her across the face while he was pee drunk at the racetrack. It was outdoor track. She went to pick me up and often stayed to watch my dad race. I was a pit crew kid for most of my life. Well, this guy, he slapped her for cheering for my dad. A bunch of rowdy stock racing fans started getting up, but my mom hauled off and decked him in the mouth. He fell off the side of the bleachers, not very far, but far enough to bruise his dignity. He was escorted out, and that was the last time I saw him, other than a few days later when he came with a trailer and a borrowed truck. He was beat to frick, eyes all swollen and mumbling through a split lip. Her divorce was final on her 1-year anniversary. Holy frick, I mean, good for Mom for slapping that piece of crap down, but still. Story 28. Was married for 10 months, nearly 5 years ago. Wife cheated for another man who is still with him 4 years on. Messy divorce. Wouldn't do it again. At least you found out early on, rather than getting divorced years later. Better early than later, I guess. Story 29. Husband decided to start an affair within 3 months of marriage. Found about 6 months after. Still maintains there was nothing wrong. Just thought it would have been over before I found out. Oh, and our baby was only 6 months old. What a catch of a man. Started divorce proceedings after waiting the year minimum. As far as I can see from your story, good riddance to this trash. Story 30. She had another boyfriend when I proposed and kept him around while planning our wedding. They got married after our divorce. Don't get married while you're in the military. Listen to the signs. Click on one of the videos on the screen now, or Karen will sue you.